Brothers and sisters, welcome in. This is Gidgicken. We are today talking through what is very likely my favorite build that I have ever played in Path of Exile 2. We're talking insane single target. We're talking very cozy clear. We are talking very, very low investment. You could have this up and running, clearing pinnacles, clearing 200% delirious T15s with genuinely a couple of divs. If that, you could probably get it up and running for much, much cheaper than that even. And everything that you're going to see here today is entirely solo self-found. What that means is that this is going to be well below the potential power of this build, and any smart player in Trade League could take this build way beyond what I'm showing here. But even in its current state, it is two-tapping pinnacle bosses. It is very easily clearing 200% delirious, giga-juiced maps. So very excited to see if anyone can tries this out in the Trade League and can take this well beyond what I've got here. Now, enough intro. Let's talk through what's happening in this build. For those of you who have played the Whirling Assault, which is going to be a fair number of people, given that it's one of the more popular builds this league, you're going to recognize a fair amount of tech from that build. So full credit to those who have kind of popularized and built the Whirling Assault build. There's great content creators like Jung Roan and Moxie out there who have been popularizing a couple variants of that Whirling Assault build. And you'll recognize a few pieces there. So let's talk through what those pieces are. The most important three pieces, I would say, of this build are going to be Hollow Form, which is one of the new notables from the Martial Artist, the new Ascendancy from 0.5. We've got Hollow Form. We have Way of the Stone Fist, combined with the Loctonial Caress gloves. Let's walk through each of those one by one, starting with Hollow Form. Now, Hollow Form is a fantastic, like, build-defining. GGG's been doing a great job with the new Ascendancies. But Hollow Form is a new skill where if you channel, you create fleeting images of yourself, and they will perform a melee attack of your choice, and then they'll disappear. Now, importantly, as you can see here, if you have a power charge, then the skill will consume that power charge to create additional images. And what does Hollow Form look like in practice? Well, let's look at it together. If we channel this skill, if we hit it just once, then you'll see I've got Sunder socketed into it right now. And if I channel, you see that astral projection of me who makes the attack once and then disappears. Now, if we hold it down, you can see that we've got all kinds of Sunder going all over the place. Now, the second build-defining piece, the second very critical piece of this build is going to be the second piece of the Ascendancy, which is the Way of the Stone Fist. Now, this is a notable where any gloves that you equip will be transformed into a Fist of Stone version of those gloves. Now, that includes all unique gloves get transformed into some Fist of Stone variant. Now, whether it's intentional or not, there is a pair of gloves called the Loctonial Caress, which, when transformed into the martial artist version of those gloves, has these lines of text here. X% chance to grant an endurance charge, X% chance to grant a frenzy charge, and X% chance to grant a power charge to allies in your presence on hit. Now, interestingly, whether or not this is intentional is anyone's guess, but when you project your astral projection, they consider you an ally, and you are in their presence. So if they hit something, then they have a chance to grant you, their ally, one of each charges, an endurance charge, a frenzy charge, or a power charge. And the Whirling Assault takes great advantage of that tech. So Whirling Assault is going to be hitting a lot of enemies and therefore going to be granting you a lot of power charges. Now, if you recall, the Hollow Form, when you have a power charge, it will consume that power charge to create an additional image. So if you use Hollow Form to create an astral projection, who then hits an enemy and then grants you a power charge, you can then consume that power charge immediately to create 3 images of yourself, each of which will have a chance to grant you a power charge, and therefore you can create this infinite loop and you have infinite power charge generation. So super cool tech, definitely not discovered by me, discovered by people much, much smarter than me, and is kind of the tech that is powering all of the Whirling Assault builds out there. And we are going to be using the exact same thing to infinitely generate our power charges so that we're always getting 3 projections, 3 attacks. Now, where our build starts to differ a little bit is that we actually are going to slot 2 different skills into Hollow Form. Hollow Form is a really interesting skill in that if you slot multiple skills into it, it will go through each of the socketed skills one by one, and it will do it in order. So I'm actually going to unequip my gloves here for a second. And if I were to just have Sunder slotted into my Hollow Form, then I can channel that and we'll see a bunch of Sunders going off. However, if I were to put Shield Wall in there first, then what you'll see is that it will generate Shield Wall first, and then it will trigger Sunder behind it. So we have Shield Wall creating walls, and then you have Sunder behind it coming through to explode those walls. Now, interestingly, when you slot these in, you'll notice that the lines here don't say on hit against an enemy or against enemy hit. It will generate these charges even if it hits, I don't know, a wall. So let's try if we've got Shield Wall and Sunder slotted in and we channel that. You'll see that, I'm gonna exit out of this. Once I start hitting walls, I have 3 endurance charges up there. I have 6 power charges, which means that even in hideout with no enemies around me, I have infinite power charge generation. Okay, so why are we going with the 2 skills that we're going with? We've got Shield Wall and we've got Sunder slotted in here. Let's start with Shield Wall. Shield Wall is a skill where you ram your shield into the ground and it throws up a wall, and then enemies can attack the walls, or, importantly, your slams, war cries, and shield charge will instantly shatter them all. Now, Shield Wall is really interesting in that it doesn't necessarily scale with your primary weapon. It actually scales with your shield. So 5 to 7 added physical damage per 15 armor on your shield. Anything that's going to be scaling damage off of your defenses is just often a very good investment because you get both offense and defense. And importantly, Shield Wall is going to do 100% more damage if it's destroyed by your skills. So if we have Sunder hitting our walls and exploding them, that is literally double damage. And in fact, if you quality up your Shield Wall, then that 100% actually becomes 140%. So Shield Wall does a massive amount of flat damage, scaling off of your shield as the primary damage scaler, and it gets more than double damage if it's being blown up or destroyed by your own skills. Now, this is where Sunder comes into play. Sunder actually in this build is going to be doing very little damage. You'll see that it's actually leveled at level 9. We'll get into that in just a second, but we have not scaled this up. In fact, our primary weapon is pretty trash. So this skill is doing very little damage to our enemies, but it does 3 very important things. Number 1 is it is going to be the thing that is exploding all of our walls. Our walls are doing all of our damage, and if it is destroyed by our own skills, then it will do 100%, 140% more damage. So that's piece number 1, is that Sunder is going to be exploding our walls, therefore proccing all of our damage. Number 2 is that this skill applies Sundered Armor. So hitting an enemy with fully broken armor applies Sundered Armor. What is fully broken armor? Fully broken armor lowers a target's armor, and if it hits 0, then they will take 20% increased physical damage from hits. Sundered Armor basically doubles up on that benefit. So Sundered Armor is a debuff that can be applied to enemies with fully broken armor that increases the physical damage that they take from hits by an additional 20%. This effect stacks with the target's normal fully broken armor. Also important to note, modifiers to fully broken armor also applied to Sundered Armor. keep that in mind for, we'll come back to that later. So between Shield Wall and Sundered Armor, we've got Shield Wall coming down, and then Sundered Armor coming in from behind and exploding the Shield Wall, dealing huge damage. And for anything that survives, it will be applying Sundered Armor, massively increasing the damage that will that the enemy receives from subsequent hits. Now, the last benefit of having the Sunder attack slotted in here as well is that it has a lot of individual hits. Anything that has a lot of individual hits is going to be really powerful for the Loctonial Caress. It means that we're going to be very reliably generating infinite charges, even though when we have 2 skills slotted into Hollow Form, you'll see that we're actually consuming 2 power charges every time that we cycle through that, right? Once for the triple Shield Wall and then once for the triple Sunder. So it's really important that we have skills that have a lot of hits and can generate a lot of power charges. Okay, so we've talked through kind of the core of the build. We've got Shield Wall and we've got Sunder. Now, for the first long time that I was playing this build, I had the skills slotted this way, where you have Shield Wall and then you have Sunder. So you have the Shield Wall come down first and then the Sunder come in from behind and explode that. However, if you swap these, it really starts to feel buttery smooth, where the Sunder actually gets timed perfectly to where it explodes the Shield Walls the moment that they get spawned in. So if we walk across here, you'll see that it's blowing up the walls right as they come in, which makes the build feel even better. Okay, so we've got our primary skills. How are we going to scale our damage? There are a few ways that we're going to scale our damage. Number 1 is going to be, of course, in any shield wall build, is going to be our shield. Now, please don't judge. Of course, all of this is solo self-found, so the gear is not going to be anything to write home about. But like I said, even at the current gear levels, we are very easily clearing all of the content in the game. So number 1 is going to be scaling our shield. For our shield, we are going for as much armor as possible. The fortunate thing with this build is that this is extremely easy to craft. Not this shield in particular, but getting a shield that is very good for Shield Wall with a lot of armor is very easy to craft. And the reason why is because there are very few prefixes that can spawn on a shield. In fact, there are, I think, like 7 or 8 or something like that. So getting the 3 prefixes that we want is very easy. The 3 prefixes that we do want are the ones that scale our armor. That's flat armor, percent armor, and hybrid armor stun threshold. That will get us to the highest armor that we can get. And then, of course, for any rune sockets that are in there, you're going to want to scale up the armor as well. Suffixes, of course, there's a lot of great stuff that you can have on the suffixes here. Anything from resistances to probably the best would be the additional physical damage reduction. But what we have here is totally fine for our purposes. So number 1 scale is going to be getting as much armor as we can on our shield. Next up is going to be our weapon. Now, interesting for this build is that the weapon, we really don't care about the damage on the weapon. There are exactly 4 affixes that we care about on the weapon, which makes it, 1, really easy to craft, or really cheap to buy. But as I'm playing solo self-found, I care about how easy it is to craft. So the 4 affixes that we care about on our weapon are going to be gain damage as extra. This comes from an essence. We want increased damage against enemies with fully broken armor, because again, we're going to have enemies that always have fully broken armor and sundered armor. And then plus level to all melee skills and attack speed. Those are the 4 things that we care about. This is very easy to craft because you have one of the modifiers is going to be coming from an essence. The other one is going to be a desecrated modifier, which is you have a very high chance of landing on this, especially if you guarantee an Aminamu modifier. So very easy craft. If you are trying to look for plus melee skills, especially in SSF, then one way to do that is to just gamble and buy a ton of maces if you are willing to settle for +3, or very easy to very cheap to buy and trade. This should be a very, very cheap mace. That's second piece. Number 3 is going to be, of course, as is the case in any build, the level of skills. For us, we are getting levels of skills from a couple of places. We're getting it from the mace. We're getting it from from our amulet. We have +3 level of all melee skills here. And then on gloves, eventually you might be able to target farm getting +2 melee skills on a corrupt. This is a corrupted Loctonial Caress. And these drop like candy, so you can kind of target farm any corrupt that you need. So we did get lucky and we got the plus level of all melee skills. So we are at +7 melee skills. That is not very high, and anyone in trade can go well beyond what we've got here. It's totally doable to have +4 on a one-handed mace. I ended up getting an exceptional mace in SSF, so I did end up settling with the +3. Okay, that's plus level of melee skills. The other incredibly important scale, damage scaler, is going to be attacks gain damage as X. This is exactly what you'll see in the Whirling Assault build, where a lot of the skills that they're using are intended to give you extra damage as X. What am I talking about there? Number 1 is the rest of our skills, basically, that we have slotted in here are intended to just give us buffs to attacks gain damage as extra. So most important is going to be Rend, where if anyone has ever played any build that generates power charges, chances are pretty good that you're going to be using the Rend tech, where once if I attack with Rend, you'll see that up here I have the fully charged buff. If we hover over Rend, you can consume a power charge if possible to grant you a buff that gives you extra lightning damage. This is an insanely overpowered buff. I don't imagine that this is going to last very many patches, but for now, the buff grants you 50% of damage gained as lightning. An absolutely ridiculous buff, but hey, we will take it. So we are always operating with a lot of power charges, so when we Rend, we're always going to be getting an extra 50%. And then there are a few other places where we are getting attacks gain damage as X, which I would consider optional if you're looking for a little bit of extra damage, a little bit of extra single target. Those places are, first off, Devour. Now, Devour can be an extremely powerful skill, especially when paired with the Hollow Focus. Hollow Focus is a skill that generates a bunch of bells near you, and any hits against those bells will be critical hits, and they will also be considered coals. So, if we're using Devour, there are 2 supports that make this an extremely powerful combination. Number 1 is going to be Thrill of the Kill. Thrill of the Kill means that any time that you coal an enemy, you will get 25% of damage as extra, 25% of damage as lightning damage. 25% is a lot. Now, additionally, we have Blazing Critical, which is attacks gain 15% of damage as fire damage when you critically hit with supported skills. That means that if you Devour against one of your bells, and remember, the bells are going to always be critically hit, and they will always be cold. If I Devour here, you'll see that I immediately get the Blazing Critical, and I immediately get the Thrill of the Kill. So very powerful. You're getting 40% of extra damage if you have those bells near you and if you Devour on them. The reason why I consider this optional is you could theoretically do without this. You could theoretically not go Hollow Focus, and instead you could go maybe Way of the Mountain, or if you wanted to try to explore some of the combo stuff that's happening, you could very easily do that and just swap out Devour and swap out Hollow Focus and go that route instead. That probably is a more tanky way to go, but you'd be sacrificing a bit of damage. The other place where we are getting extra damage is going to be from Pounce. Pounce is a skill where you jump to a target, and wherever you land or whatever enemy you hit, you trigger a mark against that enemy. For us, we are using Freezing Mark. Freezing Mark makes them much more susceptible to being frozen, and when the mark target is frozen, the mark activates, which gives us a buff. For us, that buff is going to be 30% of damage gained as cold damage, which is pretty powerful. And but the reason why I consider this one to be optional is because for us, it is reliant on a piece of gear that we are using, which is the Vestige of Darkness. Vestige of Darkness is just an incredibly fun piece of armor to be wearing, and so once I got it, I really wanted to make use of it. We are dealing a huge amount of physical damage all the time. And what this armor does is that it makes it so that the physical damage from hits contributes to chill magnitude and freeze buildup. Because we are dealing so much physical damage, we are basically always freezing, we are always chilling. And so combine that with the Freezing Mark, we are very reliably getting this extra 30% of damage gained as cold damage. On top of that, Vestige of Darkness, it's really fun to have the freezes all the time. And then, man, if you have not played with the Bodak haunting your presence, it is a phenomenally good time. We'll talk a little bit more about that. One other awesome benefit of wearing the Vestige of Darkness is if you haven't played with the Bodak haunting your presence, it is really fun to have him around. There are big slams that happen everywhere, big swipes. What I am fairly confident in is that the big slam that happens from the Bodak is actually considered a slam. So if you have a shield wall up, the Bodak will actually come down and slam and explode your walls, which is just incredibly satisfying and just makes mapping a little bit more reliable. Okay, so we've talked about the ways through which we are getting damage, extra damage as X. The next place where we are scaling our damage is going to be the effect of Fully Broken Armor. So on the passive tree, there is a couple of places where you can scale effect of Fully Broken Armor. Here in Tempered Mind, we've got 15 increased effect of Fully Broken Armor. Down here, there's another area that gets us increased effect of Fully Broken Armor. Now, if you recall, the Sunder gem, if we look at the Sundered Armor tooltip, it says modifiers to Fully Broken Armor also apply to Sundered Armor. So we're basically double dipping on this scaling here with the increased effect of Fully Broken Armor. So a major damage boost for us there. The last, now honestly at this point, you could scale damage far beyond what I've got here, but at some point in this game, damage is no longer the most important thing, because if you're killing a boss, if a boss has 10 million health, it doesn't matter if you're doing 10 million damage or 100 million damage, because the boss is already dead, right? So at that point, the priority becomes smoothing out the build. Admittedly, in the early stages of this build, it can feel a little bit clunky, it can feel a little bit slow. So the rest of our time is going to be spent trying to make this build feel really buttery smooth. And happy to report that that is very much possible, and this build can just feel very, very good, practically a one-button build. So how do we do that? There are a couple of things that are very important for smoothing this build out and making it feel really good. Number one is going to be investing into reduced penalty of using skills while moving. We slotted into our hollow form, we are using mobility, which is huge for making this build feel much better. It's 25% less movement speed penalty while using supported skills. In fact, with mobility here and rapid attacks, we actually have no support gems helping with our damage. Shield Wall is just that good that it's carrying the damage basically without any damage supports. But we've got mobility here, and then within the tree we are investing into basically any point that can possibly give us reduced penalty reduced movement speed penalty from using skills while moving. So between all of that, we're getting pretty significant reduced penalty, which means that we can do, we can walk at not quite full speed, but much better than the default speed for this skill for hollow form. Now that goes a long way in making the build feel a lot better, but then also faster attacks is going to be really important. So for our weapon, faster attacks or increased attack speed just makes it so that the damage starts up a whole lot quicker. And hollow, even though Shield Wall I don't believe scales with attack speed, the hollow form does a scale from attack speed. So right now it's 70% of base, so attack speed does make a meaningful difference in making this feel a little bit better. The other thing that I think that makes this feel a little bit better is going to be, like I said, swapping Sunder to be first in the proc order so that it explodes the walls like basically right as they spawn in. Next is going to be Hollow Focus. Hollow Focus, you can do this build without. Hollow Focus, again, was the passive or the Ascendancy Notable, where is it? That spawns the bells near you. It's certainly doable to do this build without it, especially since you can just generate all of your charges by hitting your walls. But with the bells near you, you can always call, you can always crit, so you're always getting these buffs here. That's going to make things feel a little bit smoother as well. And if you don't want to be proccing and getting your charges from this, you can always just eat a bell. Next is going to be Curse Immunity and Slow Potency. The bane of this build is any time that your movement speed goes down, or your skill speed goes down, or your attack speed goes down. So in this game, there are a lot of curses that slow you down, and there are a lot of slows that slow you down. We're talking chilled ground, we're talking temporal change, all of that good stuff that everybody loves to have in their maps. For us, we have made a lot of investment into reducing the effect of curses and reducing potency of slows. There's a lot better ways and a lot of ways to do this that I'm not thinking of, but for us, we are using a Swiftstalker coat that gives us 30% reduced slowing potency of debuffs, and then I've also gone ahead and added in there's one of the new craftable modifiers, which gives us additional reduced slowing potency of debuffs. On the passive tree, there's also a little bit of additional investment that you can make there. So at this point, we have the slowing potency is very, very low against us. And then one of the awesome things that you can get on and then Curse Immunity is going to be massively helpful for us, where if you don't know, in the passive tree, there is actually a hidden node, the Hollow Keeper. If you are in this section of the tree and you allocate this node, which is in itself a fairly good node, and this one, which is also a very good node, this node appears and you can then allocate it giving you reduced effect of curses and 35% reduced effect of non-damaging ailments on you. At this point, we are basically slow immune, and usually I will have in my gear I will have there's a rune that gives you 50% reduced effect of curses, which makes you at that point completely curse immune. Right now I have 33% reduced effective curses on my chest. This I am actually still working on trying to get this to be deflection rating, but I ran out of Omens of Light. I am in SSF, so right now I'm stuck with reduced effective curses. So while I have that, I took out the rune, but once that switches back to deflection, I can just swap back in a curse immunity there. So at that point, we are curse immune. We are basically slow immune, which makes this feel buttery smooth. The last thing that makes this build feel really good is investing everything you can in the second weapon set into skill effect duration. Skill effect duration, what it will do, as you might recall, we have several things coming from our second weapon set, which gives us extra damage. Wet Rend is giving us 50%. We have Pounce and Freezing Mark, which is giving us 30%. We have Devour, which is giving us another 40%. But those buffs only last, 8 to 20 seconds. And so skill effect duration is going to go a long way in making this feel more like a one-button build. So we have invested all of our second weapon set skill points into skill effect duration. So we get well over 30 seconds anytime that we rend. Let's see what we get. 33 seconds up from the default, which is much, much less than 33 seconds. Okay, so at this point, we have the core of our build. It feels fairly buttery smooth. What about the other stuff? What about our gear? What about our jewels? What about our defenses? Now, again, as a reminder, this is SSF, so my gear is going to look a lot worse than yours will if you are in Trade League. But when it comes to our gear, the weapon, like I said, is extremely easy to craft. The only things that we care about are plus to skills, attack speed, gain as extra physical, and then damage against enemies with broken armor. Our shield, all we really care about here, or what we care about most at least, is going to be trying to stack up as much armor as we can. The suffixes can certainly be powerful as well, but we're pretty flexible on what we get there, whether that be resistances or armor applies to Ellie, or additional physical damage reduction. Now beyond that, you can go a lot of different ways on the defenses. I went primarily evasion, but you really could probably, I think that there's a fair amount of folks who have gone full ES on this build. I think that there are people who have maybe leaned even more heavily into armor. This one is a little bit scattered, admittedly. We've got a fair amount of evasion, we've got a fair amount of armor, we have a bit of ES as well. Maybe not the best idea to spread it out like that, but I'll be honest, I don't remember the last time that I've died. I feel very tanky, even if I'm standing in a mass of fully juiced mobs. It is fairly difficult to die, and so we've gone very heavily on the evasion, on the body armor. The reason why I really like doing that is because in the passive tree, you have this node right here, which is very powerful. It's 1+1 to max energy shield per 12 item evasion on equipped body armor. That means that if we go all in on evasion, you're still getting a very healthy amount of energy shield. And then because of this really powerful node right here, it just makes sense to lean in a little bit more on the evasion and the energy shield. So we do get a healthy amount of evasion and a bit of energy shield to help smooth things out a little bit. Now, one of the other really powerful things, one of the really powerful buffs in this game is going to be Ghost Dance. Ghost Dance is a buff that recovers your energy shield. Anytime you're hit, it will recover your energy shield based on your evasion. This is just really, really powerful as a defense. So even if you don't lean into energy shield, I personally think on this build, it's just really healthy to have some amount of energy shield, because you're going to have a lot of evasion, and so when you get hit, you don't even need to invest into energy shield recovery or regeneration rate or anything like that. It just automatically tops up your energy shield without very much investment there. Plus, you are already going to have a moderate amount of energy shield from your gloves, even if you're not scaling into it, and you're going to have a moderate amount of energy shield if you're going the Vestige of Darkness route. So even just between those two things, you're going to have a bit of energy shield, and these things combine to make you feel fairly tanky. On top of that, you're going to already have a Giga Shield, so it's kind of a shame not to scale into armor a little bit. So you'll see that I have armor scattered a little bit amongst my gear as well. What that means on defenses is if I were to open up a T15, we're gonna save these tablets. Let's generate an endurance charge. We're operating with 69% armor. We've got 75, upper 70s evasion. We've got 27% block. We've got overcapped resistances here. So and then on the deflection side, I am investing into a bit of deflection. We've got 64% chance to deflect, and actually 76% while I'm moving. And actually, that is while I don't have deflection on my body armor. I am still trying to get deflection on the body armor in this desecrated spot. So once I'm on that, I'll have really high deflection, and at that point, yeah, we're talking about pretty strong. At least it's nothing special, but I don't remember the last time that I've died. I feel very tanky on this build. Beyond that, I have as my on the helmet, I did corrupt this to try to you can target farm this fairly easily, and so I did corrupt this a few times until I got maximum power charges. We'll talk about why I like that in just a second. For the rings, I really don't have anything special here. I just have like a maximized resistance ring. I think that this has like 180 res on it, right? So I went all in on just a resistance ring, and then the attribute requirements on the build are a little bit tenuous on SSF, so this ring really is like total crap, except that it has T1 dex and T1 strength, so that helped ease a bit of the ease a bit of the tension there. On the amulet, I've got the it's not great, but whatever I could find that had +3 level to all melee skills, I basically locked into whatever I can find with that. So it's all right. We've got some global armor evasion and energy shield, which is all right because I'm kind of split between the three. We've got some life, we've got some evasion, we've got some chaos res, and some skill speed. The anoint here is going to be the Well of Power. We'll talk about that one in just a second as well. For the boots, it's fairly basic. We're trying to maximize movement speed here, and then because I have a fair amount of armor, I'm doing armor also applies to Ellie. The belt, this is just a temporary belt. I actually did get a headhunter, so this is what I'm using all of the time, but for the purposes of this video, don't necessarily think that everyone's going to have a headhunter. And then again on the gloves, I have just farmed as many of these as I can, and then corrupted these until I got +1 to level of all melee skills. Okay, for the jewels, my jewels are absolute crap, so it's probably not even worth showing them. There's really not anything special to show here. You can get much better gems than me, but a few things that you would probably want to get would be anything on a Heart of the Well that has gain as extra is going to be great. And then if you do get any like time loss stuff, increased armor from your equipped shield is going to be great as a defense because you have such a giga shield. And then of course things like damage against enemy with fully broken armor, that's going to be great as well. But otherwise I really don't have anything special on my jewels. Okay, let's talk through the rest of the skills that we have here. We've talked about Rend. Rend is just there to give us some extra damage. We've got, of course, Hollow Form. We've got Hollow Focus, which again is just there to maybe generate some power charges, but more importantly, it's something that we can reliably cull and reliably crit, which means that our Devour is going to be proccing Thrill of the Kill and Blazing Critical. But on top of that, you can also slot in some stuff to give it some, so that it's maiming enemies, it's culling enemies, it's blinding enemies, right? These are all great things for increasing your survivability. Devour, we've got in here Thrill of the Kill, we've got Prolonged Duration, which again, we're just investing into this everywhere that we can to make it so that those buffs are going to last us a little bit longer. And then you'll see in a lot of places I've just got Rage. This build doesn't have any super reliable way to generate Rage, so we've just got it in a few different places to try to see if, most of the time I am at max Rage, but it's not super reliable. And then for Devour, Holy Descent is always a great option for slotting into anything that leaps. It'll generate you Consecrated Ground, which curse immunity is always a great thing, and then life regen. We do have a fair amount of life. On we're going to come back to this one here. Pounce, we've got Freezing Mark with Mark for Death, which gives us some extra armor break, and then again more skill effect duration, some rage, and some Holy Descent. Wind Dancer is arguably one of the greatest defensive buffs in the game. This is basically required for anything that is an ES build. We've got Maim in here, we've got Blind, some increased area effect, again, some Rage, and some Life Leech. Ghost Dance, we've talked about, and then Charge Regulation I would consider mandatory on this build, given that we're getting so much benefit out of this. We always have Frenzy Charges, we always have Endurance Charges, and we always have Power Charges. So you're always getting more critical hit chance, you're always getting more armor evasion and energy shield, and you're always getting increased skill speed, which is phenomenal. And then last thing here is Refutation. Oh, Refutation. Refutation is being used by basically everyone and their mother. Refutation is just way too good. If you aren't familiar with Refutation, this is a buff. It's one of the new gems that it will spend all of your ward to get a short buff that blocks all blockable hits and then applies parried to enemies. Parried is insane. The parried debuff makes targets take 50% more attack damage. I mean, this is absurd, right? And it's applying it to anyone around you that's hitting you without you having to parry. So, yes, it's in here. It's too good not to include, but certainly I would think that in future patches this will not be available. So, take that with a grain of salt. Once it procs, everything dies immediately, but you do have to wait for people to hit you. The last thing here that I will mention, and this is just for kicks and giggles, is because we are using mace skills, the Ancestral Warrior Totem is a really interesting design area, or a really interesting place to explore. Now, anything that you slot into the Ancestral Warrior Totem, the damage is going to scale with your main hand weapon. And our main hand weapon is trash in terms of the damage that it deals itself, because we don't care about the damage that our mace deals. So there's a few things that I've explored with Ancestral Warrior Totem. Someone in trade with like a much better weapon could probably make better use of this, or someone much smarter than me can figure out how to make use of this. But right now, just because we do have 3 endurance charges all the time, it is kind of fun to just slot in Molten Fissures and then just drop one down. It's going to send Molten Fissures everywhere, and then all of your Sunders are going to send through a bunch of Aftershocks in there. So it can be useful for clear, and like it's just kind of goofy to have in here. There's something there. I'm sure that there's something here that we could have with Ancestral Warrior Totems. Just dropping it down. And then proccing a bunch of fissures, but it would take someone smarter than me to figure that one out. Okay, the last things that I will say here. On our tree, we are also investing a bit into maximum power charges. We've got maximum power charges here, and then on our gear, we have corrupted an extra power charge there. That gets us to a total maximum power charges of 6. You might say, if we're getting infinite power charge generation, does it really matter how many power charges we have? And the answer is absolutely yes, it does. When we are running our rotation of Shield Wall and Sunder, we are consuming 2 power charges every time we go through the cycle. Now, sometimes you just get unlucky, and your Sunders don't proc this 9%, your Shield Walls don't proc this 9%, so you go from 6 down to 4, and then from 4 down to 2, and then 2 down to 1. If you have 6 charges to start, then you get 3 full rotations to try to proc this 9%. Right? You go from 6 to 4 and 4 to 2 and then 2 to 0, and then you have all of those chances to try to proc that 9%. If you're dealing with just the default 3 max power charges, then you only get 1 rotation of those skills, 1.5 rotations of those skills to try to proc that 9%. And once you go down to 0 power charges and you're stuck just doing 1 of each skill, then suddenly it becomes really difficult to try to get those power charges back. So just having 6 power charges for me felt like it really smoothed it out to where I was I always was getting the triple shield walls and the triple sunders. So at least for me, it felt like it really smoothed the build out. Next thing that I'll talk about is mana sustain. This is kind of the bane of this build. It has been a challenge to try to solve this one. In Trade League, I think it would be much, much easier to solve it. And if anyone has any ideas on how to better solve mana costs here, that would be super helpful. But for me, really the only way to do it was to get Well of Power on the amulet. Well of Power is an anoint that recovers 5% of maximum mana when you consume her power charges, and we are consuming a hell of a lot of power charges. So this recovers a lot of our mana. I've tried a couple of other anoints here, like casting efficiency, to try to reduce our mana cost, but this was by far the most effective in keeping our mana up. But even at that level, if I were to hold this down, you'll see that still our mana is going down. Now it's close. We're almost sustaining our mana, but it's not quite there. So we do have a mana flask. You could solve this with a good mana flask. We did happen to get an Uhtred's Chalice that we corrupted for an extra 23%. So this one just means that we rarely have to press a mana flask. We press it once every 12 seconds. And we're rarely running out of mana right now. But admittedly, until you do have the Well of Power allocated here, you are going to be pressing mana flasks a fair bit. It's doable, it's just a little bit clunky. Just a little bit of a mapping showcase. I do have some 200% Delirious maps here, where we've got some tablets slotted in here for increased effectiveness. We've got 12% here, 14% here, and 14% here. We will slot in a T15. I'm an Alkid Go kind of person, so I don't necessarily pay attention to the modifiers here. But we will jump into a map and show you how it looks. I am going to keep my Headhunter unequipped because it's unreasonable to expect that people would have a Headhunter. We'll see what it looks like without the Headhunter equipped here. Usually when I walk in, I usually will start with just a Devour on these to get my buffs up. And then we just start walking. You do need to aim. The damage in this is directional. It's wherever your walls are. So that's a benefit that the Whirling Assault, a huge benefit that the Whirling Assault has on this build, is that the Whirling Assault, the damage goes in all directions, whereas this is going to be wherever your cursor is. That being said, I do think at the top end, the single target could potentially be higher on this with like giga investment in a trade league. It could be really high there. And then also, I think there's a case to be made that the ceiling on defenses on this one is going to be higher. Now, I am likely planning on going hardcore SSF. Now, I am likely going to try to do some hardcore SSF on this build because I do think that when built right, the defenses on this can be very, very strong. I think if you were to go Way of the Mountain on the Ascendancy rather than the Hollow Focus, you could potentially get some really good defenses when you pair that with deflection and armor and life. You're getting incredibly strong damage mitigation. So we'll see. I can report back on that one. But as you can see, this does feel buttery smooth. I mean, I don't even have my buff up here from the Rend. But yeah, I mean, it's basically just walk forward build and hold down your primary attack, and everything around you dies. Now listen, for those of you who are watching and saying, man, he's so slow, and the clear speed on this is not good, listen, I'll admit that this is probably not the right build for you. I'm not necessarily one to play this game for divs per hour or to try to play the economy. I more enjoy just surviving and killing monsters. And for my needs, this build, it does enough of that. Let's see if we can find our boss here at the end of the map. As you can see there, the single target damage is really strong when you aim it right. That's another kind of finicky thing about this build, is that if you get your walls right on the boss, then it will melt the boss. If you don't, then it will not. So definitely I think that Whirling Assault is going to be the better build here, but this is just kind of a goofy, fun one to mess around. If you want to see a little bit more of this gameplay or have any questions about the build, please tune in to twitch.tv/GidGickin. Would love to see you. Happy to answer any questions. Also, feel free to drop any questions in the comments. I will be sure to respond to any of those. And